Hello everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for this panel discussion on team leadership. I'm Caroline McDowall, I'm one of the trustees of SWiT and I'm also Head of Technology at M&G. Today, however, though, I'm delighted to be hosting this panel who are going to give us all their insights and experience on how to build good cultures and how to look after your teams. So I'm really excited to hear about your experiences of leadership. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to explore the human side of technology. How do we build efficient, healthy, high-performing teams? And we'll discuss some of the common challenges that we as leaders find as we're doing that. So we will end the session with a Q&A. You can submit questions on our Slido, and I'll try to get to as many of them as I can at the end. So we'll leave 10 minutes at the end for that. And time permitting, we can open for other questions if there's anything else that we haven't covered. So without any further delay though, I'm going to ask each of our panel members to introduce themselves before we start with our first question. So over to you. Shalini, would you like to start?
Sure. Good afternoon all. I'm Shalini. I'm a technology leader at Amazon. Along with my incredible team at Amazon, I optimize the search experience you all get on Amazon's website in UK, US, Germany, a few other marketplaces, let's say. If your search experience has not been great for any reason, maybe we can have a chat afterwards. I'm very excited to be here today with all my co-panelists and looking to share some insights from my personal experience. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Rich Wilson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Gigged.AI. I'm that annoying company that you keep seeing on LinkedIn, but you don't really know what they do. That's me. I've spent the last 2.5 years building a startup, but before that I was in leadership positions at Gartner and an American company called Tech Systems. I also do a lot of work and a lot of talks around burnout, around trying to build wellness into culture, so I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit about that and some of my experiences as a leader, good and bad, over the last few years.
Hi, I'm Myra Fulton. I'm one of the VPs of engineering at Skyscanner. I have been in Skyscanner for 11 years, so I've had many roles, but my current role is I look after all the engineers that basically build our product from homepage right the way through to redirection across flights, hotels and cars. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Hi everyone, my name is Lianne McGrory. By day I work for a company called ServiceNow as a platform technology company where I head up non-profit sales across EMEA. And in my spare time, I'm also part of the Scotland Women in Technology organisation SWiT, the same as Caroline, where I'm a board member and trustee. I have a slightly different role to some of the panel here today. I'm a sales leader, so a slightly different approach. I did graduate with a computer science degree, but my role is more sales leadership, so hopefully give you some experience from that.
Great, thank you very much and welcome to each of you. We're going to jump straight in with the first question and I'll start with you, Shalini. Hard one to start with, big question. What do you think is the hardest part of leadership?
Just one. I think there are many, of course, but when I think about all of the challenges which leaders, especially in technology, face day to day, what comes to my mind is balancing the diverse personalities and the technical skills, especially in today's date when technology is emerging every day, every second, I should say. So I find that quite a big challenge when you get the people in your teams across the globe. Today, we are not working just with the folks in Glasgow, let's say, or just wherever you are based in. You're working with folks from across the world. You take the calls in the morning, maybe from Asia region, and then in the evening from North America or somewhere. And that brings a very diverse culture, a very different perspective as well from all of these teams, different expectations, different tech stack, different technical expertise and aspirations, which makes it very hard to balance that all out, or I should say harmonize it to the level where you can get the productivity out and can meet the business requirements. So that's something which is very difficult, but all of it, I think, goes down to the communication. How do you actually communicate with all of these teams, all of the different expectations you have from the teams? There is a very famous book which is called The Culture Map by Erin Mayer. It's very enlightening when you read that and you get to know how different cultures, different backgrounds play the role in your team, which you usually don't realize when you have all these people in your team. So I think that's the hardest one for me to address as a leader.
Okay, thank you. There's a few nods along the panel there. Rich, do you have anything else you want to add to this one?
I would just build on, I would agree. I think the kind of toughest part is the communication, right? And I think to build on that, though, myself personally as a leader, I've always kind of struggled with it, keep knowing what to communicate and when. And I don't really maybe mean verbally, but obviously not non-verbal as well. When you're under pressure, when things aren't going well, when even you've got something personally going on in your life as well, it's different situations. I always struggled, like my younger self, I would always try and be like, if people used to say game face, I would always try and be have this kind of game face on, and I would never show vulnerability. I would never share what was going on in my life. I would never share even issues that I was going on. Now, that's obviously a fine balance, but I would always be on the other side. I would never really share anything, and I would look invincible, but I wasn't, but I would look it. And that's something I've learned a lot, but also made a lot of mistakes over the years. But if you're having a bad day, it's okay to admit you're having a bad day. If you act in a bad way to someone because you have felt a certain way, it's okay to go back to them, preferably quickly, and be able to say, hey, look, I had this going on. That wasn't personal. This was, I've read a lot of books. Radical Candor's a really good one about having a really good framework about dealing with communication. But that was the one, I've heard it called the leadership burden. Just how do you constantly be on, but be on in a way that is not going to demotivate people? Because I used to find my body language would demotivate people sometimes. I didn't say anything, but but yeah. So I don't even think I have a better answer for that. But yeah, how do you been able to just manage that comms as a leader and been able to know what tools and what words and non-verbal clues to use at certain times?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. I think we talk about authentic leadership, don't we? And that plays a big part into that. I'm going to move us on to our next question. I'm coming to Lianne this time. We didn't sit in the right order. So following on from this, we hear about it's hard to recruit and retain the teams that people need. How do you find that and how do you deal with it?
I think when I think about recruitment, there's a lot of different things that come into the fray for people to be interested in thinking about your organisation, applying to your organisation. People look different places. You've got word of mouth, Glassdoor, how people talk about you as an organisation and your career development. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but the other important thing is the hiring process. Where do they find information about your organisation? How responsive is the recruiter? What does your job description look like? And how engaged do they feel through that process? So I'm sure this is not news to anyone, but it's a two-way process. How do you make the candidate feel engaged throughout the process, and because they're assessing you just as much? And it is a highly competitive environment, so keeping that in mind without any sort of feeling like you're a great company, there's lots of choice. And then around retention, for me, retaining good talent is about the employee experience, and you can't control all of that as a leader or a recruiter. It's about how the company sets the tools that you use, the career development opportunities, and good leadership. I think you talked a little bit about leadership there, but your direct leader, how that person leads a team and supports and engages the team. So I think there's a lot of things around recruitment and retention, and just know that you can't control them all.
Yeah, thank you. And Myra, how about from a skills shortage within the tech space? To what extent is that impacting your team?
So I think everybody's probably seen it. I think from a tech shortage, probably from a Skyscanner perspective, we're not too bad in that kind of space. But I think exactly as Lianne said, I think it's that employee journey. And we were actually just talking about it before we joined, was really about that internal mobility. So when you have really, really good talent that you want to keep within your business, we want to make sure when people join Skyscanner, they have a long tenure within the business, that we want them to be invested in what we do. But we also understand people have career journeys and where they want to go. So actually allowing them to move about the business, support them in that kind of training and understanding into a new skill as well. So there's lots happening in AI. I'm sure there's been lots talked about it today. So a new skill set in there of how do you get ahead of the curve. So actually allowing people to go and do some exploration into there and providing that extra training. So really looking at where are we kind of potentially short in skills, and how can we help from people within and actually keep our best talent and really train from there.
Yep, I think a lot of places are following suit with that. So if you think about it, there's a lot of questions actually coming up here as well about building diversity and inclusion into your teams.
Yep.
So do you want to comment on that one before we move on to the next question?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you. With my Scotland Women in Technology hat on this time, we've had, even today, the SWiT team are at the stand outside in the exhibition hall, and we've had lots of people come and ask that question. How do I bring more women into the business? How do I think about DE&I? And I'd encourage you and your recruitment teams to really think about inclusive recruitment. And there are lots of resources out there about what is inclusive recruitment. It's everything from how does your job ad read? Do you use gender decoders on that? Where do you advertise? And there's a few resources. So here in Scotland, we have Equate Scotland that have some services to help with inclusive recruitment, and Skills Development Scotland, SDS, have an employer hub, again, with more tools and resources on inclusive recruitment. We should also say it's not easy, but there are definitely steps you can take to make it easier.
And if I probably link on from that recruitment into the environment that you create, we spend a lot of time ensuring that we have the right environment. We don't have a perfect environment, but we want to strive to make it better every day. And that's about understanding diversity and having some really difficult conversations. We've put our senior leadership team all through inclusion training. We've done microaggression training, which can put you in a really uncomfortable position. But if we can help one person understand something about themselves every single day, we can always make it better. And I think it's not just about the hiring and going, we've hired diversity, that's great, pat on the back. It's about creating the right environment for those individuals to really thrive in your organisation. And that takes work every single day. It just never stops.
Yep.
Great, thank you. We will come back to a lot of the other questions as we're going. We'll see what we cover as part of the conversation first. So I'm going to move our conversation along a little bit onto a different angle. And Rich, I'm going to come to you for this one to start with talking about wellbeing issues and how do you identify issues within a team? What signs would you look for and how can you respond when you see them?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of bad and good in this place over the years. So give a bit of background, I'm pretty open about it. So 2018, I suffered from a serious breakdown due to burnout, stress, not identifying any of the key markers of burnout, right? Pretty much avoided all of it until it was almost too late, and realised that did show up in my leadership a lot, right? So, you know, I joke, but I used to, in one of my offices, you used to come in and the first thing you'd see in the morning was relentless written in like 2-foot letters. It's not the greatest thing to see at 7:30 every morning when you think about it. So the fact that I then suffered from burnout probably wasn't a huge surprise, but I've kind of learned a lot about burnout is a topic to really embrace as a leader. Whether you've suffered from it or not, I think burnout avoidance is much better than burnout recovery, right? And being able to know when to step. So a kind of bad example of this, so the dating app, I'm not on it, Bumble, about a year ago put out this big statement, hey, we're positive, apparently, that they're giving the whole team a month off because they were all burnt out. And you're like, it's a kind of negativity, right? Why would you, everybody's burnt out, so you're going to give them a month off. I wouldn't be shouting about that. So when we started Gigged.AI, me and my co-founder was very open, about his anxiety, I'm very open about my burnout. We were like, we want to try and build a culture that has burnout avoidance. And I think the key thing is be able to know is what are some of the signs to watch out for. We talked earlier, if you're on a video call with somebody and they stop putting on the video, that's one. Somebody who's been very positive start getting very negative. And also if somebody starts being off with illness, right? So, it could be a little thing, it could be the cold, it could be like stomach issues. Don't just think that person's maybe just, they're off sick again. That could be, like for me personally, I'd never had the mental signs of burnout initially. I had the physical signs, all the physical signs. Stomach pains, ill all the time. I always would turn up to work, but I had it. So I think it's just being able, and I'll share it after this, there's 12 signs of burnout, and I think that is a brilliant resource because you can then see each time, and sometimes it's been able just to pull somebody aside and say, hey, look, how are you doing? And ask that question 3 or 4 times. Don't just ask it once, but ask, how are you actually doing? And also showing a bit of vulnerability first. So I'm always pretty open. Hey, look, I've been where you are. I think you're where I was. Am I right or am I wrong? And sometimes they'll share, sometimes they're not. But I think sometimes just even having that, and then having the resources around, we've got some mental health first aiders in the business, which are great just to point to and different resources. But I think it's just, being able to be aware of what are those burnout. Burnout can obviously lead to depression. It can lead to much bigger issues. And it's not just thinking, they're just a bit burnt out. We can need to get rid of that stigma. Yep. If any of those signs, but I think the biggest one, if you've seen someone and they're starting to get negative, that's the one to watch for me, because that can actually be something more than, they'll just be negative again. Maybe it's not, maybe there's something more to it than that.
No, thank you for sharing that. And I think
Good.
the thing I'll take away from that is about being open yourself, but equally knowing your team.
Yeah.
Because it's about having that trust to have the conversation as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and kind of trust being, again, I used to have a very much a trust is earned. I've got rid of that, right? Trust from day one, right? If people are in our team, we trust them. People can lose that trust. They rarely do, though. Yep. Inherently, people aren't that bad, right? But I think if it's like this whole, it needs to be earned, it's not always a great environment. So just being able to create that openness, and then sometimes it doesn't need to go any further. Sometimes it just means that you've recognised it and you're able to keep an eye on, right, well, I need to be careful. I don't need to send that person to London tomorrow. I don't need to send them on the red eye because you know what? They maybe got more going on. It's just those little things that can make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Myra, do you want to add anything to this one?
Yes, I think all of that kind of resonates. I think from a kind of leader perspective, the most important thing is we have a lot to keep learning on. And I think if I reflect to my journey of what I know today, even compared to 5 years ago, and just even understanding kind of well-being, what it actually means is massive. So I think as leaders, I encourage you to embrace that learning opportunity in that space. One of the things that we do is we talk a lot about it as well, so to kind of remove some of that like kind of stigma or the more stereotypicalness of it, and actually hearing people's stories like you've just shared, I think is really important for people to understand, and for leaders to know where to go for help as well. If you are seeing something, always kind of reach out. We rely a lot on our kind of people team in the business to help us. We've also got a lot of tools, and I expect most companies do as well. But I think it's about making sure people know that they're there. It's great when you get inducted and you know they're all there and you go, all right, that's fine. But it's that day that you really, really need them. Just being able to reinforce that across the business is really important.
Yeah, thank you. So let's keep going kind of on this topic and talk a little bit about culture then, because I think, Rich, you had said, the culture does help or hinder these sort of conversations and trust. So, Lianne, what would you say are the traits of a good team's culture?
In my experience, I don't know what I've done. In my experience, companies set culture. So you start at the company level, and that tends to be the values of the company, the policies of the company, how the leadership sets strategy. But then your team has a culture as well, because within your team, you might have a very different role to others. Your team has its own values, its own leadership style. And then you also have different leaders that may focus on having regular career conversations and feedback, having a feedback loop, others that don't. And so I think that the way that the team culture is set is really important. One of the things I also like to talk about is, and I think about it in my own leadership, my team's Tuckman stages of group development is a really interesting theory. And so that says that when something changes in a team, someone leaves, someone comes in, the whole group dynamic has to start again. And so you say the team storms, then it storms, sorry, that's not right. It forms, then it storms, yep. Then it norms, then it performs. And the theory says that you go through all of those, it just depends how quickly you go through them. So as a leader, I always think about where might I be in that process? What can I do to support the process? And I'd say that the feedback loop is really, really crucial. And like you said, trust is the foundation of everything. If you don't have trust, you can't be open, you can't have conversations.
Great, yep, thank you. So if we think, there's a few questions that have come up, and Shalini, I'll ask you this one. If you think about culture and everything we've been talking about, do you think hybrid working has impacted the culture and dynamic of teams?
How working?
Hybrid working.
Hybrid working. I think hybrid working has impacted in both positive and a bit of not so positive way for the team dynamics, team culture. I think we all have started to enjoy a bit of hybrid working benefits we get. We get to give more time to our families, to ourselves, because we can work remotely, we can work from anywhere. And that gives us some time back for ourselves, for our own lives. Then in addition to that, I think it increases the focus time as well. Like just yesterday, I was having a conversation with one of my team members, and we were debating about one of the topics, and it came to the point where the person said, oh, well, I find it very interesting when I actually go back home and get my focus time just to finish the piece of work I'm working on. But I love to come to the office to be able to sit with someone when we are brainstorming something, discussing a design, trying to make the conclusion, doing some whiteboarding, etc. So in that way, I think it has brought in a very positive effect on the team dynamics because people can start enjoying their lives and get some kind of flexibility to their own working style. But at the same time, if I think about the other side of it, which is communication, let's say, from leadership point of view, it is a bit hard to bring in the team together, let's say on the same day, at the same time, and have a kind of, say, big meeting, anything you wish to discuss together in person. And in my personal view, nothing beats in-person discussions. Nothing beats when you're sitting with someone face to face and having a conversation. On the videos, on the phone call, you just cannot see the body language. The vibe of the person is absolutely not visible to you. So it makes a huge difference. So with the hybrid working, we got to find some kind of balance somewhere such that it can add to the team culture rather than, slipping that out. I think you talked about the trust as well, trusting people. The trust gets increased when you see people, when you can actually interact with them. It increases multifold, right? So all those angles come into the play, and it's really with the leadership team to set the right expectations, to be still able to achieve those productivity levels with the strategies they need to apply and encourage the open communication such that the hybrid working is actually bringing the positive impact rather than just going the other way. That's my view.
Okay, thank you. Have you got any thoughts on how we could make hybrid working even more inclusive?
To make it more inclusive, I think open communication is something which we need to focus a bit more. We got to be a bit more transparent, and I think leadership got to play a much wider role here where they got to set the clear expectations. Most of the time, if you look at there are multiple surveys out there. There is one from Pfizer, or there is another from Forbes, When you look at any one of them, they mostly speak about the ineffective communication. Most of the employees, most of the people report that they were not clear about the task. They were not clear about what's going on. It's all boils down to communication. So if we want to have more inclusive hybrid working, we need to talk more about the communication. It is something, it's a commonly understood problem, but it's not so well practiced. So I think that's something which you need to focus more to have the more inclusion.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving. I'm very aware that we've got a lot of questions coming up on this board that we would like to get to. So talking about flexible working, what challenges do you think it's created for leaders? I'll come to you first on this one, Myra, and then maybe if you've got anything you want to add, thinking about your hybrid workings, Shalini, we can cover that.
So I think it's about probably knowing where your teams are. I think definitely, and what's the right thing for your business when it comes to hybrid working. And I think it's about being really clear and transparent. So I think really connecting back to that communication. If people know what you expect of them, it's far clearer. I think as well as humans, we want to be nice and we want to be really flexible and we want to make it all okay for everybody. It's a real challenge, I think, for leaders because you want to make your environment a really good place to be. But you have to make sure you get the right thing for the business and being really clear in your intent of what you need as a business. So we really, really value in-person connection. And we have set out what we expect for people to do, but also understand there's a bit of flexibility and different people have different working styles. How best do you do that? And I think it's about that give and gets. we kind of talk about. So what do you get from the organisation? What can you give back to the organisation? And have that very much a kind of two-way street. And I think really understanding the world has changed so much. How best do we ensure that we can meet the business needs while creating the best place to work for people?
Anything you want to add to that one, Shalini?
I think Myra has covered that well, but I would say striking that balance could be a bit hard, but we got to do that. Having the leadership positions for anyone, it's a huge responsibility where we got to think, how to bring in that balance. People would have different expectations because, like I said, people come from different backgrounds, different skill set, different knowledge. There are a lot of differences which you got to address. And at the same time, you got to find out what are the business deliverables you still got to achieve? Where are your productivity levels? What's your quality bar? You got to meet that. So being a leader, it puts pressure on you to strike that balance somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, final question from me, and then we will cover some additional ones that are coming in. This one nicely addresses the second top question as well. So Rich, I'm going to come to you for your thoughts on this one. And I'm interested to think, you were talking about well-being and how you balance that, but how do you balance it with performance, and how do you deal with underperformance and helping people improve as well?
This is the worst question.
Well, it lines up nicely to difficult conversations, and how do you feel when you have to have them?
So I think going back to the point we were talking about there, it is about trying to create that culture first. So I said I'd spent 16 years working in American it's a very, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's different, right? So you've got to be seen, hours worked is key, all of those things, right? Pretty old school. So when we started this company, we decided that, well, again, I'm in charge, so I can do what I want now, right? I don't need to report to a corporate anymore. So I just test some stuff, right? So we decided we had a flexible working policy from day one. Worked with a charity called Flexibility Works. Shout out to them, good charity. So we worked with them. They helped us build a flexible working program. We helped build wellness days in. We also focus on outcomes over hours, right? So we're like, look, we're not going to focus on when are people clocking in and out. We're actually going to focus on what outcomes are they achieving, right? And then being clear that they know, because in a startup, it's quite difficult. They do move a lot of the time. Initially, you can't focus on numbers. You've got to focus on, intangible things at first. So I think, but this works as well in the big companies. It does. Are people clear on what their outcomes are? Do they know what does a good job look like? I think I learned this when I was at Gartner advising companies. A lot of the time, their team wouldn't know what good looked like. Like they would know the company grow revenue by 10%. That's boring. They wouldn't know though, right? What is my actual job? What does good look like for me? What are the things I need to achieve on the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? What does good actually look like? Which is really, really key. Not, are you working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and that's judged on. And then what are the soft skills which are judged? What's the characteristics that you've got to come up? And I think making sure that is key. As a startup, we used OKRs, and that was a really good way to make sure everybody's very clear on what and what's showing up in a period of time. And then when it comes to underperformance, that's when you can then focus. Is underperformance, is it around one of those OKRs? Are they not showing up in a certain area? Why is that? And being honest about that and not waiting until the last minute. You go, right, you're going in a performance plan. If you're putting something in a performance plan, if they have no idea that's coming, you failed as a leader, right? There's no way to excuse that. If someone is coming to that performance management review time, you need to make sure that you've been honest. It goes back to that trust. And I said, I love radical candor. It's a good framework to just be honest with people about, hey, look, I think you're not showing up here. And here's what we're going to do about it. Mentorship's a good one. Coaching is a good one. But actually helping them do something about it. Is it an outcome? Or is it a characteristic that they're not showing up? Being able to focus on what that underperformance is and then working with them. And sometimes you can have an open conversation with someone and be like, look, this isn't right for them. It's not right for us. Let's shake hands and walk away amicably and do, instead of, you don't want a messy divorce, right? It doesn't really work. You can have a way that people leave, thinking good because people have been honest about them. So I think it all goes back though, managing underperformance and managing that, it all goes back to, what you were talking about the environment that we're creating, right? It goes back to that. And, your job as a leader is to make sure that those people do perform. And if they don't perform, what are you doing about it? And what are you helping? And again, not everyone's going to be a fit, right?
Yep.
Not everyone's going to work. But Are they a good person? Are they trying their best? Can we help them get better? Well, if the answers are yes to any of those things, then you need to try and get them better. So yeah, not an easy one, but I think it's linked to the environment and the culture that you're creating.
So you're taking that ownership as well as part of that conversation?
Absolutely. You know, again, if one of my teams underperforms and fails, then I need to look at myself and go, is that down to me? Sometimes it has been. Sometimes it's just that I've not created a good enough culture or an environment for them to be successful. And then, right, so what does that need to be? And critiquing and finding a better way to get better. But yeah, I used to take every lever as I've done a bad job. Now it's not as black and white as that, but I used to take it that hard, and then I kind of was able to then go, okay, were they clear? Did I help coach? And did I participate in the situation? Yep. And as I said, try and get to an amicable exit. Nobody wants to be fired on a Friday and not have any idea. I mean, it's just not, I think there's decorum, right? I think as a leader, you've got to have some decorum. And I think being able to have that is really, really important. Still a person at the end of the day.
That's exactly what I was thinking. We're still dealing with humans, isn't it?
Still a person.
Yep.
It's not an AI agent yet.
Not yet.
We're not going to go there in this one.
No, this is not the right panel. Okay, we've got 5 minutes for some quick fire questions. So I'm just going to open these up. Whoever feels like they want to answer the question, please feel free. And if we can keep our answers nice and short, we'll get through a lot of them. So our top question is, what leadership style do you prefer? Supporting, directing, coaching, or delegating, or a mix based on team formation stage? Kind of feels like yours, Lianne.
I'm looking at those. There are different leadership style models, and the one that I've used is a little bit different to that one. But what I would say in my experience is you can have a preference, but then what you need to do as a leader as you get more experience is learn that you need to use different leadership styles based on the situation, based on the individual, based on the problem. And so actually the best thing you can do as a leader is to learn all of the styles and figure out, like when someone talked about this before, like making sure that your leaders understand themselves and the people so that you can match the right leadership style to the situation.
Great, thank you. Next question then. Told you it's quick fire round. How do you protect your team from the politics within the business and competing and conflicting priorities from higher level leadership? They get worse, by the way, so you might as well take it.
I'll take that one too. Just, I would say quickly, we would say in Scotland, it rolls downhill. And so I do think that you need to protect your team, and you need to figure out what messages coming from above, whatever layer that is, need to make their way to the team, and in what way do they need to make the way to the team. So I think as a leader, what you can do is try and protect and deflect your team. In a sales environment, you would often have the leadership team say, well, this KPI is off or that KPI is off, and make them do such and such. And you go, well, actually, here's the reason. This is what's been affecting the team or that individual, and leave it with me, and I'll coach and support them. So I do think that you have to expose the politics that help them understand the reason behind things, but protect them when it doesn't actually affect or impact their role.
Great.
Just to add on that, I always call it, you said deflect, I'd always call it my job is to be the shield, right? So I'd make sure if it needs to get by, it needs to get by me first. And to be a shield to stop, because obviously rhetoric comes back, and rhetoric can scare people sometimes, because it can sometimes be quite just demotivational. So
not contextualised either to that individual.
Yeah, so yeah, I was like, that was always my job. Be the shield from the board and make sure that anything comes down, it's got to get by me first.
At times, you got to be transparent as well, though. I think eventually people get to know what's going on, and it's better that being the leader, you go out to your team and, speak about it rather than them getting it from elsewhere. So it's really case-to-case basis. I totally agree. Not everything can be revealed at the first instance itself, and, let the team get demotivated and derailed from what's going on. But transparency is something which I, frequently apply and works well for me.
Okay, next question. How do you ensure that you're managing your personal energy, but also remaining available to your people as a leader?
I'll start. So I think in this one, you can't look after your people if you don't look after yourself. And I think the most important thing you can do is learn who you are and what do you need and how do you manage your energy. So is it that you need to be around people to re-energize? Do you just need some time on your own? And I think just being able to understand who you are then allows you to be the best leader you can be for your people.
I do think you also need to figure out who you can vent to, because I know there's been lots of times I'll get on a call and, the first thing you say is, how are you? And I go, been in back-to-back meetings since 9 this morning. That doesn't help start the conversation off on a good front, and it might start with someone else saying the same thing. So depending on the person, I think you can be really vulnerable and say, it's been a tough day today. Should we wrap up 10 minutes early and get a cup of tea? Whereas I think you need to think about how you're bringing energy into other conversations, but yeah, it's hard.
Okay, next one. How long do you think it will be before market leaders start to adopt 4-day weeks, real remote working, and we see more of a work-life balance and not more of a life-work balance, and not work-life balance? Do you think we'll do that? Is maybe the other question.
Scotland was one of the leading countries to try this out in the pandemic, so there was a lot of 4-day working weeks, and actually, like you, I worked for a big American tech company. I was like, yeah, maybe this will come, because everyone wants to be on the coolest new working environment. Unfortunately, I think that with the macroeconomic environment and everything that's going on, we're actually seeing the opposite of moving towards a 4-day work week, and you will be in the office 3 or 4 days a week. So I'd be hopeful that we might get there, but it felt like that movement is sort of slowed down for now.
Any other thoughts? Okay, I think we have covered quite a lot of ground in this brief chat, and there are still a lot of questions coming in. We have covered a lot of the topics. I've been scanning through them as we've been talking. But I'd like to finish this with one question, because I would really like everyone here to have something that they can take away from this conversation as a practical thing that you could maybe think about doing. So my question to each of you is, in terms of becoming a better leader, what one takeaway should our audience take away with them today?
I think I can start. So I think if you want to just think about one thing related to the leadership, that would be open communication, in my view. Nothing beats to be a bit vulnerable, speak your mind, and have open communication. It's a foundation for everything you do as a leader. That's my view.
Thank you. Rich?
Get a mentor. I would say that's been my biggest thing for me over the years. I've been lucky to have mentorship, normally outside the organisation. So someone who's been there, done it, maybe a few years ahead of me, and usually from a different environment. But it's been something that we've done a lot of, and I think having, especially in the Scottish community, I think anybody that I've ever asked to be a mentor, they've always said yes. So I think, as in this environment, we're good. But I think having someone who's been there, done it, that's out with your organisation, you can maybe spend half an hour or an hour with once a month, every couple of months, is a great way to get different perspectives. And they maybe don't have all the knowledge of your company, and sometimes that's a good thing, right? Because it can just be, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Why don't you try this next time? Again, I found that it's simple, it's often free, but it works pretty well.
Thanks.
I'd go seek to understand, don't assume anything, because what you probably assume might be wrong. So definitely just get kind of more clarity, ask lots of inquiring questions.
For me, it's continuous improvement, and that means different things to different people, but we learn so much more as we get older, as we garner more experience, and so that might be going back and doing a short course, going back and doing another university course, doing some more reading, whatever fits into your busy lifestyle. Come along to Scotland Women in Technology networking event. So, or events like this, I think the more that we can expose ourselves, the more that we can learn and be better leaders.
Great, thank you. It was a bit of a shameless plug, but thank you.
Yeah. Or digit events, of course.
Right, well, you will be glad to hear that that's the end of our session for just now, so thank you very much. I hope you've all enjoyed the conversation and you've been inspired as I've been. It's been really nice to hear open and honest answers from everyone, so appreciate it, thank you. And I would like to thank everyone for coming in and listening to us today and for sharing your questions. We've got too many questions to answer, which is great because it just shows how good a topic this is and that people are interested in building strong teams. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you.